Centre, and the conversation is around land reform. We have the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, the Deputy. We're also joined by the Acting Judge President of the Lands Claims Court and a land specialist from the Central University of Technology in the Free State. So once again, a very warm welcome to you. Minister, we've already spoken to you. We've heard your voice as well, Deputy Minister, on the insert there. So I'm just going to jump to you, Judge Shamir. Land Claims Court, if you could just briefly tell us what people need to do to come before your court. What are the processes and procedures that will present, that they need to ensure when they come to you?
Well, may I start off by saying that in order to successfully lodge a claim for restitution of rights in land, a claimant has to have been dispossessed of a right in land after 1913, and at the time of dispossession, he or she ought not to have received just and equitable compensation. That is the threshold requirement for the lodging of a claim. Now, claimants lodge their claims not directly with the court, but typically they would go to the Land Claims Commission. The Land Claims Commission then tries to investigate, settle, mediate the claims, and it is only those claims that cannot be settled that come before the court. I think it's important to emphasize that the Act as it currently stands has a cut-off date for lodgement of claims. Claims ought to have been lodged by December 1998. There is a bill that has been published for comment, and that has extended the cut-off date to 2018. All
right. But Minister, this date of pre-1913 has come into focus, hasn't it? I think you mentioned it in your opening speech.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Yeah, government thinks that, as the President put it in the House a couple of days ago, we could not, as a democratic government, understanding our history, be happy and satisfied when some of us were not catered for. It was not a deliberate exclusion, but it was more a systemic exclusion, that the Khoi and the San were left out of the process. Now it is time for us to go back and go beyond the cut-off date of 1913. That's for the Khoi and the San, for heritage sites, for historical landmarks. Those are the three exceptions that we are working on right now.
Okay. Professor Mayende, you were a former DG Land Affairs. You've studied this whole land question. I mean, can we actually solve it? You know, we've got these historical realities, unfortunately, that we live with. They were wrong, but the government is trying hard to redress that. But is it something that can be solved in your view?
Yes, thank you very much, Peter, and good morning to the audience. Yes, indeed, land reform in our country is on a positive trajectory. That much, I think, should be acknowledged. As we speak, something in the vicinity of 8 million hectares have been redistributed, you know, in the space of 18 years. I think by most standards, that is significant. However, there are quite a number of challenges that seem to continue to bedevil the program, you know, in its entirety. The first one, for example, and one which I know the Minister and the Department are working very hard to address, is that the program is extremely expensive. Perhaps one would even say prohibitively expensive. As we speak, something in the vicinity of well over close to 30 billion rands has been spent on both restitution and redistribution over the space of time. Secondly, I think the other challenge is that we're still struggling to come up with an integrated approach where, you know, we don't only talk about transferring land, but we transfer land as well as know-how, credit, access to markets, and so on. In a word, a package, a totality of a package to the beneficiaries. And this is why, for instance, we've seen so many of the projects not succeeding, and which now have to be recapitalized. And another aspect, which is the last point I would like to make, is that our land reform program is not linked dynamically to agrarian transformation as well as, in a broader sense, to rural development. By that I mean, you know, very briefly, Peter, that for instance, we have an agricultural sector in our country that requires transformation. We've got, for instance, something in the vicinity of 45% of the land and the farmers in our country who are deficit producers or who are underutilizing the land. And that is land which can be utilized and should be brought into the framework, you know, and the process of land reform.
So food security can be another back issue there.
Yes.
All right, so just before we go to another commercial break, Deputy Minister, he sang your praises. He says you're on the right trajectory, you're doing quite well, but the pace is so slow. Just here in the Western Cape, we're seeing people taking over buildings in District 6. Is this a sign perhaps that you're running out of time to address these issues? How can we accelerate this process? Are we going to see more invasions? Are we going to see a Zimbabwe-style land invasion if we don't speed up?
Peter, my view is I agree with Professor Mayende about the trajectory of the relationship being good firstly, and that we need a more dynamic relationship between rural development and land reform. And this is why these two were paired. And this pairing, this couple, is 4 years old. And in this space of 4 years, in other words, in the past, the Department of Land Affairs with the professor led was not dynamically linked to rural development. That has now been done. So part of the trajectory that I agree with him is about bringing this together. And in the emerging area of job creation, for example, today, when we have so little jobs being created, it's in precisely the area of Department of Rural Development and Agriculture and the work we are doing together, which is producing those 44,000 jobs as recorded in the quota reported recently. And so I think that provides evidence for this integration that is emerging, given the 4 years of this relationship that has now been created. We do not expect, and we wouldn't like to see what you are referring to as the Zimbabwe experience. There are very important reasons for that. That part of the work that the minister has also been speaking about lately is increasing the quality of support that we do give on land that exists. We also think that we have not been hearing enough of every stakeholder coming into the space, especially the farmers and property owners, who themselves are as critical stakeholders in helping us avoid those situations. We would like them to be spoken to as urgently as it is possible, because they have authority and power to do with land what can unleash a huge dynamic on their own. So we really would like to see them doing that. There's no question about us as government, broadly speaking, putting into place institutional measures, legislative measures, including, I hope, the increase of the capacity of the court to be able to fast track these things.
Right.
We will be able to do that work faster than we have been able to do, including on the issue of costs.
Right.
That one is unacceptable and need to be undone.
Yeah, and also get some more money from Minister Pravin Gordhan, I'm sure. All right, so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll start getting questions from you at home and also our audience here